Ye-
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and welcome to program Insight in V News English. Dear viewers, as you know, United States of America and Israel has launched multiple airstrikes at different Iranian cities. So it's a developing story. And in response to US and Israeli airstrikes inside Iran, Iran has also launched missile attacks against US bases in the region, including Israel. So in today's conversation, we will discuss that what are the objectives of the US and Israeli joint airstrikes against Iran at a time when negotiations were heading positively. What prompted United States and Israel to launch these airstrikes against Iran? To discuss this all, we are fortunate to have with us Senior Strategic Affairs Analyst Dr. Syed Mohammad Ali Saab. Very warm welcome to program Insight in Videos English on this emerging issue, Dr. Saab.
Thank you so much for having me, Mateen Saab.
My pleasure to have you in our program. So, Dr. Syed Mohammad Ali Saab, as the international media reports are reporting that Iran is under attack now. There are multiple joint Israeli and American airstrikes are underway at different locations in Iran. So I would like to know that as the talks are also underway, but what are the objectives of this sudden airstrikes by Israel and United States against Iran?
The war was in the offing for some time. This conflict was considered imminent, and I have also mentioned on a number of times that this war was imminent, and both Iran, America, and Israel knew that this war was imminent. And the peace talks, frankly speaking, did not have any practical utility besides allowing both US and Iran to ready their forces in a better way for this war. So the
Hmm.
time spent in these talks was essentially useful for both US and Iran to
Hmm.
prepare in a better way for this war. Because there was no convergence in which, even on the agenda of these talks. Iran wanted to keep these talks restricted to its nuclear program, whereas US had repeatedly said they also wanted to include the Iranian missile program, its support for different militant organizations in Middle East as part of the agenda, which Iran always rejected. So the
Right.
expectation of any breakthrough or major concession by Iran was extremely unlikely.
Hmm.
Secondly, I think at this decision to go to war against Iran by US and Israel was made several weeks ago, but its announcement was only made today. And the evidence for that, I'm going to share three evidences. Number one, you remember a few weeks ago when the regime of Venezuela was changed, the
Hmm.
US carrier battle group led by USS Ford was the main force deployed for this regime change operation in Atlantic Ocean. And immediately
Hmm.
after this operation against Venezuelan former government was complete, uh, the USS Ford was ordered immediately to rush to the defense of Israel. So within 2 weeks, without even giving 1 day holiday to its crew and navy, they were ordered to move immediately towards Israel. So now the defense posture of US is very clear. It clearly indicates its strategy. This carrier battle group is led by USS Abraham Lincoln, and which has around 70 fighter aircraft. It also has about dozen destroyers and cruisers, which provides its missile defense capability, and it also has a couple of nuclear powered submarines, which are armed with almost 150 Tomahawk cruise missiles each. So most likely, this carrier battle group deployed in Arabian Sea is currently involved in launching attacks against Iran. Whereas the carrier battle group led by USS Ford is deployed near Israel in the Mediterranean Sea in order to defend against the response that Iran is giving in the form of missiles and drone attacks against Israel. So the strategy is very clear here. So these developments were taking. It took weeks to take place. So it is not a surprise that U.S. had launched attack alongside Israel against Iran, and the objectives are very clear, and they are four objectives as announced by President Trump today. Most important objective is regime change. They want, which militarily means they want to assassinate the political leadership of Iran and the major military leadership of Pasdarane Inqilab, and which is why we are and blasts in Tehran, because Tehran does not have any nuclear facilities. The nuclear facilities are the second target, and according to IAEA, the stockpile of the 60% enriched 400 kilogram uranium is stored in Isfahan. So it could be a possible target besides Natanz and Fordow. The third set of target is the Iranian missile capability, and that means the US and Israeli forces could be targeting three types of missile facilities. Number one, the missile production facilities. Secondly, their storage sites where these missiles are stocked. And number three, the launch sites where these missiles can and are being launched against Israel and US forces. So that is the third set of target. The fourth set of target, as President Trump announced, is the Iranian Navy, which primarily consists of large number of gun and missile boats. So they could be targeted by the US Navy in order to prevent Iran from blocking the Gulf of Hormuz in future, which will raise the global oil prices. And the second aspect is that Iran has a few Russian-supplied kilo-class attack submarines, which could also be a potential target by the U.S. Navy. So these are the four targets which I think the U.S. has announced.
So, in addition to missile, is any other defense capability possessed by Iran, or Iran is depending only on missile?
That's a very important question. I think Iran has four options in terms of its targeting strategy. The current option which they are exercising is primarily based on attacking the US bases in the Middle East. And there are reports of explosions in Doha, in Qatar, in Bahrain, where the headquarters of the US Fifth Fleet is located, also in UAE. So I think Iran has decided to retaliate against Israel, but also against US bases in the Middle East. But this is a risky and a slippery slope, because so far these countries have not attacked Iran directly. But if their territory is being used by the US forces and Iran retaliates against these countries, then this can expand this conflict very quickly and can lead to the entire Middle East being engulfed in the conflict. The second option, obviously, which could be far more dangerous, but possible, which President Trump also referred to, is the possibility of Iranian forces using swarm drone attacks and cruise missiles, hypersonic cruise missiles, against the US naval fleet anchored in the Arabian Sea. Because they have very advanced cruisers and destroyers armed with hundreds of anti-missile systems. So these drones and missiles can be shot down by the US Carrier Battle Group air defense system. But some of these missiles and drones can still go through and cause some damage to the US Navy, which is why the US president has been briefed by its military leadership that US should be ready to absorb some damage and loss of life as a result of this very risky but large-scale US and Israeli attack. The third option is the asymmetrical option, that whatever capability the different militant organizations sympathetic to Iran, like Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and in Iraq, they can launch attacks on U.S. interests and their bases through guerrilla tactics. So that could also complicate and expand this conflict further. The fourth option that Iran has is the use of its dozens of small gun and missile boats to saturate the US Navy. So these are the four options which I think Iran has. And US is aware of these options. That's why they have carried out preemptive strikes against Iranian Navy so that they are not able to block the Gulf of Hormuz, which will obviously have a significant impact on global oil prices and put pressure on US and Israel to end hostilities soon.
In the context of this ongoing war of Pakistan against Afghanistan, mainly targeting the rogue regime of Taliban and the terrorist sentries, what will be the impact of this Iranian crisis, this Iranian story, this Israeli and American joint attack on Iran? What will be its impacts on the region and particularly on Iran, on Afghanistan and Pakistan?
I think the timing of the Afghan Taliban's large scale attack against Pakistan is very significant and directly linked with Prime Minister Modi's Israel visit. Only a day before Afghan Taliban attacked Pakistan, at least on 53 different locations on the border. So it's not a coincidence that the Indian Prime Minister Modi was visiting Israel and meeting Prime Minister Netanyahu when the Afghan Taliban decided to launch a major attack against Pakistan. So it seems that it is part of the Israeli and Indian agenda to encourage, support, and facilitate Afghan Taliban to pressurize and distract Pakistan from the threat of Indian forces and also the emerging Middle Eastern and West Asian challenges related to Pakistan's security. Pakistan has given a very heavy and destructive blow to the capability of the terrorist organizations against Afghanistan, who are using Afghan territory to launch attacks against Pakistan. But I think Pakistan should preserve its hard power and not get too distracted and keep a very agile and alert force posture, which allows its military to simultaneously deter and defeat any attempts by Prime Minister Modi, because he promised Mr. Mateen that Operation Sindoor is not over yet. So it is possible that creating a major northwestern distraction through Indian-sponsored terrorist attacks against Pakistan could be part of the Indian and Israeli strategy so that Pakistan is forced to move its forces, air force, and capabilities and formations away from eastern border towards western border, which India could again try to exploit through a misadventure like Operation Sindoor. So Pakistani forces and intelligence need to be very vigilant. The third factor is very clear that Pakistan is a target of Israeli and Indian nexus, which are jointly supporting and encouraging instability in this region, but particularly using terrorism against Pakistan. And you would recall that after the previous Israeli attack on Iran, Iranian government arrested number of Afghan nationals who were doing intelligence on behalf of Mossad and providing target information. They were nabbed and sent back to Afghanistan. So I think Pakistan and Iran have a common threat from Afghan terrorism, who are not only promoting terrorism through BLA, BLF, and TTP against Pakistan and Ansarullah and Jandullah against Iran, but also the Afghan nationals are being used as intelligence assets against Iran and Pakistan. So Pakistani and Iranian decision to send back the Afghan illegal refugees is very important for the regional security and stability.
Doctor, so the role of the United Nations is to prevent crises, conflicts, and wars. So this current joint airstrikes by Israeli and United States armies and air force against Iran is violation of international law. There is no sanction or no approval from UN Security Council. So in this backdrop, what international law says, and do you think United Nations Security Council will take up this matter? Do you expect that UN Security Council will intervene in this matter?
I think it is likely that UN Security Council hosts an extraordinary session due to the extraordinary situation in Middle East, and I expect China and Russia to condemn attack on Iranian sovereignty and security. But since US and its allies like France and China exercise veto power, I doubt there will be a consensus resolution. And secondly, I think international law and international institutions like UN are critical to maintaining international peace and security in the world. But unfortunately, as somebody once said, that international law is like a web, like a weak web of spiders, which captures and controls weak states, but is not effective against powerful countries. And cannot bind and restrict them for using their intervention and aggression against weaker states. So I think this is a bitter reality with the world, particularly the global south, is increasingly realizing that international law and international institutions are used as instruments of coercion and pressure against developing countries, but they fail to restrict the great powers from using military against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of smaller states and maintaining peace and security in the world.
How long this conflict is expected to continue? Only this day these strikes are meant, or in the days to come, Israel and United States will continue to target different locations?
I think this is a very important question. I think the US and Israel have planned for this attack for several months. They have practiced, planned, coordinated, spread over several months. And they know that they cannot achieve their war objectives in a short time. So they are prepared not only for a long conflict, but also to absorb heavy losses. Because this time Iran also realizes that its political leadership, its military leadership, its nuclear program, its missile capability, its naval future are at peril and directly being attacked. So I think they have their back to the wall. So they are likely to, be much more firm and aggressive in their response than last year's conflict. So this conflict is expected to escalate very quickly and very dangerously as compared to last year June conflict. And but I think from the Iranian point of view, it is a war for survival. So if they can bear the brunt and absorb the Israeli and American attacks for a few weeks or months, then I think the ability of US and Israel to bring about a regime change will not be very easy. They can definitely inflict very heavy damage on the Iranian military, missile, and naval capability. But to convert it into a regime change is a very difficult objective because despite very heavy and crippling economic sanctions and very high inflation, still there is no popular alternative political force or party within Iran which can immediately come and simultaneously be acceptable to the Western world and be acceptable to the Iranian people at the same time. There are individuals like the son of the former Irani emperor, but he is he does command some favor in the West, but he's not very popular. So it is unlikely that the US can just parachute a foreign leader and he can take over the reins of power in Iran. Iran is a proud nation, so the political system is strong. So even if the leadership is eliminated, they can still survive because the Pasdarana Inqilab have hundreds of thousands of people, and it is possible that the individual which is currently in charge can be replaced with a much more hardliner individual in future. So my concluding thoughts are that the US and Israel can inflict significant damage on their military, economy, industry, missile and and naval capabilities. But to expect that this military damage can be converted into political regime change, I think is not a very likely objective in the weeks to come.
Thank you so much indeed, Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali Saab. On a very short notice, you accepted our request and participated in our program, which is on Israeli and United States joint airstrikes against Iran and its consequences on the region's security, and what could be response by the United Nations Security Council and many other associated topics. And thank you once again for extremely insightful conversation on this emerging and this very important security issue in West and South Asia. Dear viewers, till our next program, goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.